What's up, fight fans? Welcome to the Rearview Mirror, Dana White Contender Series Episode 1 post-fight show. My name is Flyin Brian J. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, if you want to listen to all of the audio without sticking around right now, you can subscribe to MMA Mania on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, Player FM, Google Play, and anywhere else that you can think of possibly getting a podcast. You can find MMA Mania, Fight Nerds, Rearview Mirror, everything that I do by just searching for MMA Mania on said podcast feed. So we're talking about Dana White's Contender Series, where Curt Hollowball and Boston Salmon were just awarded contracts with the UFC. I couldn't get confirmation on how many fights they get in the contract, but Dana White said in his post-fight interview with Laura Sanko that it's basically like going through the Ultimate Fighter, but not having to fight so many times, and well, that's pretty much it. So I'm assuming they get a standard like Ultimate Fighter type of contract to enter into the UFC, which, you know, if they lose their first two, they're gone. Standard UFC stuff. So congratulations to Curt Hollowball and Boston Salmon. Let's get into my WTF of the card. Quickly, Jagmar says, "Who the fuck is this nerd?" My name is Flyin Brian J. Thank you for joining me, Jagmar. I actually have a show called Fight Nerds, which will be airing live tomorrow on MMA Mania's Facebook page at 9 p.m. Eastern. So thank you for noticing. Got the specs here. Fight Nerd. Let's go over my WTF of the card. I have 3 of them, and all of them are pretty good. Evan Paul Herzog says probably a 4-fight contract. Nope. I'm going to assume it's 3 maximum. If you lose the first 2, you're cut. Or if you lose the first one, you're cut. So I'm going to guess it's a 3-fight contract, but he gave no indication. Dana White gave no indication of a solid amount of fights that they get. So I'm just assuming it's a standard The Ultimate Fighter tough contract. So first option for WTF of the card is Bird coming into his fight, which was the second fight of the night, Charles Bird against Jamie Pickett. He didn't know that Jamie Pickett was a southpaw until he himself was watching the hype video prior to the fight. WTF? You didn't know that your opponent was a southpaw? That's crazy. The next 2 WTFs of the card go to the Snoopcast, which of course below me here, I want you to vote for which version of this Contender Series did you watch. There was the traditional version, which had Eve Edwards, former UFC fighter, and I don't know who the other guy was. Some white dude. I know it's one of 2 guys. I can't remember which one it is. Or did you watch the Snoopcast, which had Uriah Faber and, of course, Snoop D-O-double-G, Snoop Lion. I don't know the dude's real name, but I bounced back and forth personally. But I would probably click traditional. Andrew Kulari says, "How was the Snoopcast?" It was good at times. I mean, you're going to want to look at Twitter for Snoop Dogg's call of Curt Hollowball knocking out Matt Bessette. That was fun. There were moments that were hilarious. But then there were moments where I personally preferred the meat and potatoes version. What I really liked about the Contender Series is not only do we get a bunch of dudes that this is their springboard into the UFC, we don't have to watch them go through an entire season of The Ultimate Fighter, but also it had a little bit of everything that you wanted. It started at 7 p.m., it got over at 9, and the pacing was bang, 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 bang. There was no waiting in between. It was 5 fights, and they just happened one after another. Pacing, phenomenal. Then, if you wanted the meat and potatoes version, where it's just guys saying, okay, he's getting his jab going, he's going to set up his right hook here, some shit like that, or he's getting his jab going, he's going to get his right straight going. Had the basic stuff. Meat and potatoes, what you would expect from your standard UFC broadcast. But then, in the alternate or Snoopcast version, it also had Snoop Dogg and Uriah Faber just kind of chatting like buddies while Snoop Dogg's getting high. You could not really progressively, but so Snoop Dogg started wide-eyed and bushy-tailed, right? And then he lit up a blunt, and his eyes got real thin. Then he started just saying shit like, "Push that green button, man. Push that green button, man." and so that was gimmicky. It is gimmicky as fuck. It was enjoyable, though. So it had a little bit of everything that you would want. There was a submission, 2 knockouts, and 2 decisions. Very well-rounded card. Incredibly fun stuff. Michael Paris O'Connor says Snoop was just funny. It was just funny to listen to. Yeah, it was funny. There were moments, I'm sure there was a ton of one-liners that I missed while I was watching the meat and potatoes version, but I was mostly here to see who the next person in the UFC is going to be. So I wanted the meat and potatoes version. I just wanted to be told what was happening in the action. If I looked away to type something on my screen so I could do the post-fight show, I wanted Eve Edwards to tell me that Boston Salmon was getting his right hook going. I didn't want Snoop Dogg saying, yeah, get him, Boston. Get him, Tercio. Yeah, get him. Hit that green button, y'all. And so it's just, I'm trying to make fun of him. I'm not trying to poo-poo on the whole idea. It's just when I look away and I type stuff on my computer so I can come back and tell you what happened, I want to be able to hear the real action. Andy Kulari thinks that I'm pretty neat. Thanks, man. Thanks for hanging out. Holly Vollmer says that she loved the Snoop and Favor were together. The audio was absolutely horrible, though. Well, the worst part for me about the Snoop cast was that, on my screen here where I'm commentating, you see the area where it's like my basic-ass wall over here? There was an area about this size that was Snoop and Faber, like, covering up the screen. So maybe if it were... I would have liked it a little bit more, just a touch more, if the Snoop cast was just audio and I didn't have to look at like a 7x20 piece of the 1920 by 1080 video being Snoop and Faber just reading off papers, drinking gin and juice, and smoking weed. While that's cool, it's neat, I just don't want it to cover up fighting, because I'm here to watch mixed martial arts. That's what I'm all about. I'm here to watch Zoo and Yanu knock out Greg Rabello. But anyway, so if we were giving out performance bonuses, obviously Curt Hollowball and Boston Salmon got them. They got signed to the UFC. They got the deals. And as Stan Jasinski said a little bit ago, it doesn't matter if it's a one-fight deal, a 13,000-fight deal. You look terrible in one fight, you're out of here. You lose 2 in a row without winning one, you're definitely gone. You win 1, then lose 3, you're gone. That's basically how the UFC works. So let's start at the top of the card and work our way down with Curt Hollowball. So came out. Oh wait, the other two WTFs. Gosh, I'm sporadic. Sorry guys. The other 2 contenders for WTF of the card were: 1, Snoop said if he were to be a fighter and he were to have some entrance music to come to the octagon, his walkout song would be "Don't Stop Believin'" by Journey, which, that's surprising, right? He's the guy that rapped Gin and Juice, rolling down the street. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the top dog of them all? There was a ruffle shuffle, 5 minutes it lasted, and then it said, you are, you conceited bastard. That guy that wrote those songs, that rapped those songs, would walk out to an 80s like hair rock song, Journey, Don't Stop Believin'. What the F, Snoop? Really? That's your choice? And third contender for WTF of the card is Snoop Dogg said that he is 6'4" and weighs 171 pounds, and he could probably cut to $156. What the fuck? What? That to me was shocking as fuck. I haven't weighed 171 pounds since I was in high school, and I'm 6'2", and maybe I got a chubby belly, but 171 and 6'4", Snoop. Holy mother pearl! Go do some arm curls or something, my friend. Shoot. The blunts don't weigh enough. I gotta go eat a steak. Josh Moore just puts a bunch of question marks in the comments. Probably see me doing some goofy shit. What's up, Josh? Thanks for hanging out. I don't know. So I'm going to give the final WTF of the card to Snoop being tall and skinny like a beanstick. So let's talk about the fights. Matt Bessette versus Curt Hollowball was the main event of the evening. From the time Big John says, let's get it on, Hollowball pressed forward, and he was countering Hollowball really well. No, Hollowball was pressing forward on Bessette, and Hollowball was countering Bessette really well. So Bessette was throwing some stuff, Hollowball would counter it. At one point, Bessette threw a right high kick, and Hollowball countered with a right straight that seemed to hurt Bessette. And from that moment, basically you could tell that Hollowball was going to win this fight. He kept moving forward, he kept attacking, he kept cutting Bessette off against the octagon, and then what really finished the fight was Hollowball was ripping a couple, maybe like 4 hooks, 2 to each side, to the body of Bessette, got him to drop his hands, and then he brought the hooks upstairs, and he hit Bessette with a wide right, which is basically a wide is a hook from your backhand, so your jab hand's forward, and then you throw a hook with it. They call that a wide right for some reason. Anyway, so we hit Bessette with that, dropped him. Big John closed the show, and that happened at 2:59 of the very first round. And evidently, Snoop Dogg did a good job calling that one and was funny to watch. We'll have to check that out in a minute, but I wanted to get my personal post-fight show ready and done with before I went and checked out some other content. Moving down the fight card, Zhu Anyu. That's not how. What the hell is this guy's name? Yeah, Zhu Anyu. Fuck, I don't know how to say this guy's name. Anyway, against Greg Rabello. Greg Rabello, he come out, he was like let's look. He was minus 220 favorite. And Zuna Aniwanu was plus 180. And then as soon as you saw the guys, Zuna looked to be more physically strong. He looked to be more physically fit. And Rabello kind of had a fupa, so I was like, whoo, that's not a good look, brother. Maybe he just had his shorts hiked up really high, but he looked like he had a fupa a little bit. But anyway, so Rabello was circling like to his left, even though he's a lefty. So he was circling kind of away from his power hand, and then he threw a left straight without a jab in front of it. He didn't set up the left straight at all, and Zuna countered with an overhand right that knocked him out, basically. No, not basically, it knocked him out. And what's funny about that is this is the second time that Zuna has knocked out somebody in front of Dana White. Evidently, Dana White went on, when he was looking for a fight, went somewhere, and Zuna was in the co-main event or something, and Dana White was there. So now Dana White has watched him knock out 2 people, and yet knocked out 2 people, and yet he's still not going to get a chance in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. So that kind of sucks for Zuna Aniwanu. But anyway, fun performance. He got the KO at 3 minutes and 4 seconds of round number 2. Let's move down to a bantamweight fight between Boston Salmon and Ricky Turcios. So this part of the show was when I was watching the Snoopcast. And evidently Ricky Turcios trains with Uriah Faber and Team Alpha Male. And so from the very start, him and Snoop were all over Turcios. So when I decided to stop watching that version of the program and go back to the meat and potatoes version, I was a little confused on who was winning, because Turcios did land a lot more strikes in the first round than Boston Salmon. 29-11, but Turcios was throwing a bunch of low kicks, and Salmon was hitting Turcios with a lot of power right hooks and left straights. So his Boston Salmon's probably like 8 right hooks, 3 left straights, and Turcios landed like, well, probably all 29 low kicks. Second round, Turcios landed 31, Salmon landed 11, but the same story again. And so I was watching Faber and Snoop, and they were all about Turcios. So I'm like, wow, I don't know, man. Salmon seems to be hitting the harder shots, and Turcios has more energy. He's bobbing around. He's throwing a shitload of low kicks. I'm not sure who's winning. Third round, then it was a lot closer. It was 37 significant strikes for Boston and 47 for Turcios. And that round, Turcios seemed to be starting to wear some of the damage from the right hooks and the power boxing from Boston. And I definitely scored the third round for Boston, but the first 2, I was watching the Snoopcast and was kind of lost on who was winning. So it was tough. But anyway, Boston came out with the victory, unanimous decision. They didn't read us the 29-28s or anything like that. And in the end, Boston got the contract. Dana White said that coming into the fight, Boston Salmon had a leg injury, and so that's why he wasn't looking phenomenal. I guess I'll believe him, but nonetheless, I was a little bit surprised that Boston got the contract. I know Boston came in with a ton of hype, so he was one of the guys that was more than likely in the running to get the contract out of the get-go, but I was surprised to see it, especially considering there were two knockouts and one submission, and he was none of those. So let's move down to the next one, which was James Byrd versus Jamie Pickett. And came out, Byrd was circling a lot, throwing a lot of high kicks, looked to be the fresher guy, or like, not the fresher guy, but the more energetic guy. But Pickett moved forward, went in for some takedowns, he closed the distance, and started working for the takedowns, but Byrd did a really good job to hit with overhooks or whizzers and get back to his feet. And then after they got back to the feet, and Pickett had tried for about 3 takedowns, they were circling, and Byrd went for a spinning back elbow that missed, and Pickett went in for a takedown. But again, Byrd countered it with a whizzer and was able to get top position on Pickett, and then shortly thereafter, he hit Pickett with arm triangle choke, and he let Pickett go to sleep. Pickett wasn't going to tap, and there was only 5 seconds to go in the round, and he was a little bit confused on what happened, and Big John McCarthy had to say, hey man, you went to sleep briefly, I had to stop the fight, but shoot, he was looking really good. He was looking like he was going to be able to wrestle Byrd a little bit. All 5 of Byrd's victories, or 5 of Byrd's victories had been in the first round, so we weren't going to know if he could contend really well in the second round. So him being wrestled like that was a little bit concerning, but got to finish with 5 seconds to go in the first round. So impressive performance there, but he did not get a UFC contract. First fight of the night, which started just 2.5 hours ago, so we watched an entire fight card in 2 hours. I'm still loving that. But Manny Vasquez versus Joby Sanchez. Joby Sanchez had been in the UFC before, but he lost to Wilson Hayes, beat Tateki Matsuda, and lost to John Herrera, second round KO. So he comes in here against Manny Vasquez, and I was honestly doing a thing talking about Mayweather versus McGregor for the first little bit, but as soon as I tuned in, Vasquez hit Joe. He was getting Joby against the fence. He was circling him the fence, kind of corralling him, and he hit him with, I believe it was, I want to say a right hand, but I couldn't remember it, but he dropped Sanchez and quickly took his back and spent the rest of the first round looking for a rear naked choke, but Sanchez did a really good job at defending himself, even though Vasquez had the body triangle on him. Second round comes out, and Sanchez got a takedown extremely early, and he controlled the entire second round. He looked for a couple of Darce chokes that were unsuccessful. Then he got the back of Vasquez, and he was looking to get getting both his hooks in, but Vasquez was doing a really good job at, if he would, as soon as Sanchez would get both hooks in, he'd kick one of them out so Sanchez couldn't get the rear naked choke. He spent a brief time where Sanchez had his back on the canvas and then Vasquez's back on his chest, and he had the double hooks in, was trying to look for the rear naked, but he was unsuccessful. Vasquez was able to get one of the hooks out, then they scrambled a bit, got back to Vasquez with his knees down on the ground in like the referee's position, if you know amateur wrestling, and Sanchez basically ended the second round, hitting him with a little bit of ground and pound from that position. Third round comes out, and Vasquez went for the takedown right away, and he transitioned. He went for like a double leg, but then transitioned to a body lock takedown and just tried to kind of pull Sanchez down. But they got their legs tangled in this weird way, or it's not really weird, but I don't know how to describe it. And Vasquez untangled his own legs, was able to circle his back because there was a body lock with kind of Vasquez had his chest on Sanchez's back. He was able to switch position and get in top control. And then he gave up top position to search for a Darce choke on Vasquez, but was unsuccessful. It was never really close. Vasquez was doing a really good job. So his arm is across his face here. He was doing a good job at pulling his own arm away to give this pressure there on his neck with his own leg, and then he got out of it. Then when they got back to the feet, it looked like Vasquez was the more tired of the two fighters, and Sanchez was tired as well, but he was able to hit Vasquez with some low kicks and a couple of not very threatening combinations, but to really seal the deal and get the decision. So I scored round 1 for Vasquez, but 2 and 3 for Sanchez. I thought maybe he would get a contract because he had already been in the UFC, but it wasn't his lucky day. He'll have to try harder on the lower scene. But that's the entire fight night. That was the entire Contender Series. 5 fights, quick, easy, a lot of fun. We had the goofy-ass moments with Snoop Dogg, we learned that he's 6'4", 171. Wild shit. We got two guys that will definitely be in the UFC, but Boston Salmon has a knee injury, so I don't know how soon that would be. Hollowball got a cut over I think it was his, let's see, must have been his right hand. He got a cut on it, on his knuckle. I don't know how long that would keep him out, but we could probably see him in like 3 months. But two new guys, probably going to be on UFC Fight Pass on the prelims down there. But it's fun to know who the next guys are in the UFC. And Boston Salmon could be a contender. Curt Hollowball, I'm doubting it because he's already been here. He did lose 2 decisions, but maybe he could be a guy that we could expect good stuff from. He obviously has knockout power. He has good speed with his hands and a lot of ferocity in his heart. So fun to watch. If I were to grade the first night of the Contender Series, it gets a straight up A. The 2 fights that went to a decision were super exciting, and then we had 3 finishes, which, of course, that's going to dazzle anybody. So I would give this thing an A plus maybe, and I'm super excited to watch the next installment of it, which is happening next Tuesday, the 18th of July, beginning at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And, yeah, if I were to give my post-fight bonuses, I would have given them to Hollowball and to... I would have given it to Hollowball and Charles Bird, but that's just me. Dana White gave him to Hollowball and Boston Salmon. Josh Moore says his ears are bleeding. Then why have you hung out so long, man? If you don't want to listen to me talk, why are you hanging out? That's what I want to know. Anyway, my name's Flyin Brian J. For those of you who aren't having their ears bleeding, or your ears aren't bleeding, please like my Facebook page. You can click up there. That's my name in blue. Just click that. You can go ahead and like my Facebook page. And also, if you want to hear future audio without the ugly, that's what Kid Nate from Bloody Elbow says. But you want to do that, you can subscribe to MMA Mania on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, Player FM, Google Play, all that stuff. And I will see you then. I'll be back tomorrow night probably to talk about the second stop of the Mayweather versus McGregor World Tour, which I think it's happening somewhere in Canada. Anyway, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for hanging out. Namaste.